Good afternoon, everyone. We just wanted to tell you what the order is that we're going to go by this afternoon. First, we're going to do the University of Baltimore. Second, historic St. Mary's City. Third, Morgan State University, and fourth, Coppin State. And we are ready to get started, I think. Are you ready to get started?
I am now.
Okay, we'll start with University of Baltimore. Sarah Baker is our analyst, and Kurt Schmoke is around here. There you are. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to start with Exhibit 1 on page 4, which shows the trends in first-time applications, which reached a high of 857 in fall 2017. It then fell by almost 40% by 2019, which UBAL attributes to the uncertainty if they would continue to have a freshman program. By fall 22, applicants bottomed out at 298, and the acceptance rate also declined, resulting in only 30 first-time students enrolling in 22. And UBAL attributes this to the lingering effects on the pandemic had on recruitment efforts, which impacted in-person events. In fall 23, recruitment efforts gained full momentum with the hiring of a director of admissions and fully staffing the office. So according to UBAL, the new student decline stopped and mildly reversed in fall 23, with the applications up 4.4% and enrollment growing up by 31 students. Exhibit 2 on page 6 shows a trend in fall undergraduate enrollment, which declined for a 9th year, but the rate of decline has slowed. Overall, the enrollment was down by 7% or 96 students. And this was primarily driven by 101 students not returning, which has been an ongoing issue and was only amplified by the pandemic. This is a concern because students who stop out may lose momentum towards working towards a degree. While the number of transfer students has increased by 7 since 2015, there has been a 61% decline in the number of transfer. And since UBAL offers a majority of upper level courses, they rely on transfers for enrollment growth. The decline in undergraduate enrollment has resulted in a flip in the proportion of undergrad to graduate students, and this is illustrated in Exhibit 3 on page 7. So for the past 10 years, undergraduates went from comprising 51% of enrollment to 41%, and graduate students now account for 58.7% of the enrollment. UBAL has implemented a multifaceted enrollment strategy, and that is listed on page 7, which includes more in-person events and partnering with various organizations and community colleges. We asked the president to comment on the challenges of stabilizing and increasing undergraduate enrollment. I would note that UBAL has been engaging Baltimore City High School students through its dual enrollment program, which since spring 2017 has offered college coursework to 2,391 students. And is shown on Exhibit 4 on page 8. 64% of those students went on to enroll in a 4-year college, and 22% went to a 2-year college. Turning to Exhibit 5 on page 9 in retention rates, after improving to 76% with the 2020 cohort, the second rate declined to 67% with the 22 cohort, which may be attributed to the impact the pandemic had on students returning to campus. After improving to 56% with the 2019 cohort, the third-year rate decreased to 53% with the next 2 cohorts. Exhibit 6 on page 10 shows the 6-year graduation rates, and overall rates have remained fairly stable across all cohorts, ranging between 54% and 56%. Exhibit 7 on page 11 compares the 6-year graduation rates of Pell and non-Pell first-time full-time and transfer students. So overall, transfer students graduated at a much higher rate than first-time full-time students. And while in 22, the rates improved for transfer students, it did decline for the first-time full-time students. Turning to affordability on Exhibit 8 on page 12 compares the cost of attendance to the average net price. And in 22, the average net price was 47.4% lower than the published price. And for those with the lower family income, the net price was actually 55.5% lower than the published price. Exhibit 9 on page 13 shows spending by institutional aid, which declined by 63.9% to $1.5 million in 22. And this reflects a continuing decline in enrollment, which fell 52.5% during this time period. I would note that UBAL has been very strategic in its awards and focusing not only on those students with the greatest needs, but those who are high academic performers. On page 14 is discussion regarding the impact of the FAFSA simplification. And overall, UBAL estimates 38 students will lose their Pell Award, and 14 students who start in spring 23 who might have qualified would no longer qualify for an award. In addition, UBAL estimates they would need 75,000 for new transfers who might have received an award but will not for the coming academic year. Altogether, if UBAL were to keep these students whole, it would cost an estimated $500,000, but given their current financial situation, they would need additional funding to make these students whole. Exhibit 10 on page 16 shows budget changes by the program area for 23 and 24. Expenditures increased by $0.8 million, while E&G expenditures increased by $4.3 million, and overall spending increases across the program areas are related to the annualization of a 23 general salary increase. Institutional support increases by $3.1 million, partly due to filling of key positions and expenses related to Middle States accreditation. The $4 million decrease in spending and operations and maintenance of plants is due to a larger than budgeted transfer to plant fund due to the availability of federal relief funds in 23. Turning to Exhibit 11 on page 18 in the proposed budget, when excluding the impact of the 24 general salary increases and the 25 allowance that are not included in the working appropriation, state funds declined 4.5% or $2.7 million. The decrease is related to $1.9 million related to increasing the turnover to 6%, and there is $1.8 million of one-time legislative additions. The allowance does include over $86,000 for various statewide costs. Exhibit 12 on page 20, you can see the impact that the declining enrollment has had on the composition of unrestricted revenues. Tuition and fees went from comprising 55% of revenues in 2019 to 42% in 24. While state funds went from accounting to 33% to 50% of revenues during the same time period. And this exhibit also highlights the distinction between UBALT and residential campuses in which auxiliary enterprises can account for up to 30% of revenues compared to 4 or 5% at UBALT. Exhibit 13 on page 22 compares authorized and filled positions between 2019 and 24. So in order to address budget shortfalls due to the continuing enrollment decline, UBALT eliminated 56 regular positions between 19 and 24. Institutional support had the largest percentage of unfilled positions at almost 18%, and student services at 10.1% positions were not filled. And this highlights the challenges institutions are having in filling these frontline positions. The recommendations on page 23 and is to see the USM overview for system-wide recommendations. And that concludes my presentation.
Nice job. Thank you very much. Mr. Schmoke, welcome.
Pleasure to be with you and members of the subcommittee. Thank you all very much. It's appreciate the opportunity to testify, particularly as we're moving into our centennial in 2025.
Nice.
Joining me are Ralph Mueller, who's our new provost of the university, and Barbara Augenbaugh is our CFO and vice president of business affairs. I'd like to also thank Sarah Baker for her very thorough analysis. Sarah visited the university in the fall. We had great conversation, and we certainly look forward to continuing to work with her. I was asked to comment on our enrollment issues. I wanted to point out that one statistic that Sarah mentioned about the change in our undergraduate to graduate and professional school enrollment. This is done strategically. This is something we decided that the university should be 60% graduate and professional, 40% undergraduate. And that's because our culture, if you recall, is mostly geared towards the so-called non-traditional student. So we have been working very hard. That 40%, I should note, is primarily from the community colleges. So with the community college decline over the last couple of years, we have felt that. But we are working very hard, not only on the enrollment side, but on the retention side, which our provost is in charge of that, working very creatively on retention efforts. And that has been a very positive development. Just wanted to mention two quick things to you. One has to do with our program in Jessup Prison. Jessup Correctional Institution. We're very proud of the fact that over the since 2016, we have educated 136 men in degree granting programs. These are it's not a certificate, but actually degree granting programs. And some of those men now have been released, and a couple have actually gone on to postgraduate work. And so currently we have 46 men in that program, and you all have been very supportive of us in that. And Chancellor Perman in particular has been encouraging all the institutions to reach out to men and women who are going to be returning citizens.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yes.
So we work with the people in the prison, and then do we check up to see how they're doing a couple of years down the road? And I mean, it seems like it's a fantastic program.
Yes, Professor Andrea Cantora in our College of Public Affairs runs it, and she has developed a whole network of support services so that when people get out, they're not just left on the street. We make sure that there's employment and other kind of wraparound services.
That's fantastic. I mean, that's of all the other projects that you hear about people that have been in prison, to me, to have them be ready to do a job and be a part of the general population, that seems to be the best thing that you could do.
Yeah, many of our colleagues, other institutions now are also doing this, and we're very proud. And as I said, the Chancellor and the Regents have been very supportive of this effort. The other thing I wanted to point out, we now have a status, federal government status of predominantly Black institution, PBIs, as they say, not HBCUs, as my colleague will remind me. But and
it's not a peanut butter and jelly PBJ.
That's right, correct. We're predominantly Black institution, which means we have an enrollment that it's at a minimum of 40% African American students meeting certain economic standards. But this will allow us to compete for a number of federal grants that are designated for minority serving institutions. So
I'm glad you're there.
We're moving, and I don't just say in summary that the good news outweighs the bad news regarding the University of Baltimore.
That's good to hear. Absolutely. Okay. Senator Benson.
Good afternoon. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Great to see you,
Mr. Former Mayor. It's just wonderful to see you. Very wonderful.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you very much for the work that you all do at the university. Could you talk to us just a little bit about how you all are able to educate those persons who are incarcerated?
Yes.
Are they incarcerated? And do you all go to the
We go to the institution.
You all are set up at the institution?
Yes, and in fact, the wardens have been wonderful. When we first started the program, the men were scattered, and unfortunately ours is just men. I think some of the other institutions are doing the women's prisons, but they were scattered throughout the prison. And they came to us and said, we'd like to, if possible, be together. And the warden said, hey, that makes so much sense. It'll be like a dorm for college, so they can continue to study. So he's reorganized the population so that the people in our degree program are also housed together. Correct. Which is unusual because they usually get housed by other classifications.
The persons that you all work with, is there a time frame? Is it that they have to be eligible for parole within 2 years?
Correct.
Or is there a requirement for them?
That's right. The ones that we try to get people who are within 2 to 3 years of release. Some take a lot of credits, others not so much, but we time it so that they can either complete in prison or come on our campus after they're released.
Oh, I see.
We'll be glad to give you some more information about it.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you.
That's commendable.
Thank you. That's our hope.
Without question.
Thank you. And thank you for being here today and thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate it. Had a quick question in regards to dual enrollment and the B Power initiative.
That's right.
Dual enrollment's been a topic of conversation in this committee. And I know Senator Bailey stepped out. I know it's been something he's been looking at specifically. Can you explain a little bit of how that program is working with UB and the Baltimore City High Schools? Specifically, are the students coming to the university? Are the classes being taught in the high school by the high school teachers, or are there University of Baltimore professors going there? Can you just explain a little bit of
Correct.
of the process?
Yeah, we have one of our staff members is specifically designated for that, a guy named John Brenner. He's worked with primarily the high schools that don't have a lot of college attendance. As we've had 4 high schools in Baltimore City that are college prep. They're just doing great, the same as high schools around the state. But we specifically targeted the ones that have not sent a lot of students to schools. But we teach at the high school and at the college to give them a college experience. And during the summer, all the classes are taught on our campus, and it just gives the students a sense of I don't know, it lifts their vision about what they can do by being on a campus. So we it really is a mix of we hire some adjuncts to do teaching. We also have some of the teachers in the city public schools, but primarily it is our professors and adjuncts, and then this one staff person. Well, it's a team that he runs, and they've been doing it now for 5 years.
Okay, no, thank you, and I appreciate that. And if you wouldn't mind, I don't expect you to have the information today, but if you could give the committee the information, maybe in the future, as far as what that breakdown is, what that mix is it a 50-50 mix as far as being taught in the high schools, or who's actually coming? I know in the summertime, you said exclusively they're coming to campus in the summer, but during the traditional school year, what that makeup is of what's actually being taught in the high schools by the high school teachers versus what's being taught in your campus by your professors. That would be helpful.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have heard a lot about that this session, and just it's interesting from each county and each area how they split it up, but very popular.
Right. It's been very successful to us, and of course the students love it.
Oh, they do. I've met with students that, they've finished their high school credits. They can hardly wait to get into the college scene, and they're big shots by the time they get over there. So it's good.
It's great.
It's real good. Okay. Are there any comments, any questions we have? That's it.
Thank you very
You've done
much.
well. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Okay, next we have Historic St. Mary's City Commission. Jacob Polakov is the budget analyst, and Dr. John Seidel.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Again, Jacob Polakov here today to present the DLS budget analysis for the Historic St. Mary's City Commission. We'll see on page 1 in the operating budget summary that the fiscal 25 budget decreases by $523,626, or about 7%, to a total of $6.9 million. On page 2 of the analysis, we have information regarding two proposed deficiency appropriations, which add a total of just over $358,000 in general funds for 2 separate purposes. The first is $242,882 to provide additional funding for wireless network installment expenses. And the second is $115,626 for cost of living adjustment related expenses. We'll see on page 3 in Exhibit 1, the fiscal 2025 overview of agency spending, which shows that the largest share of Historic St. Mary's County Commission's fiscal 2025 allowance is $1.7 million, or 25%, for administrative functions. And then moving right along, we have the proposed budget changes broken out in Exhibit 2 on page 4. The fiscal 25 allowance decreases, as previously mentioned, by about $523,000. This decrease is largely driven by the removal of more than $1 million in one-time expenses, which were included in the fiscal 2024 appropriation. Some of the largest changes that I'd like to highlight quickly are the salary increases and associated fringe benefits including the previously mentioned cost of living adjustment and increments. Those are obviously in the personnel section towards the top of Exhibit 2. And then under the other changes, there's increased insurance cost funding for the new Maryland Heritage Interpretive Center and the new Maryland Dove. And then some of those one-time funds that I mentioned, which come out of the budget this year, are funding for additional maintenance equipment, new vehicles, and one-time funding which supported non-capital expenses for the new Maryland Heritage Interpretive Center. On page 5, we have personnel data, which shows that the number of regular positions does not change this year. There's a subtraction of 0.2 contractual FTEs this year. This leaves the total personnel number at 69.72 positions between regular positions and contractual FTEs. There's no budgeted turnover for Historic St. Mary City. So that's good right now because they also have no positions vacant at the moment. In terms of key observations, we'll start with those on page 6. And the first is that there's a slight drop in visitation in fiscal 2023. However, visitor numbers do continue to exceed pre-pandemic levels. Attendance levels fell, as I said, slightly in fiscal 2023, with 53,388 members of the public visiting HSMCC, a decrease of 388 visitors from the prior year. Visitor totals, as I said, continue to surpass totals from immediately prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, with a full breakdown of the total number of visitors of different types in Exhibit 3 on page 6. So we have those broken out into general attendance, school children, site use for recreation, as well as both paid and free events. Commission continues to explore new ways to increase the number of visitors in all of the categories as they continue archaeological activities and the creation of new exhibits. One key group of visitors that they're actively working to grow is school children. They're working to develop new school tour programs while improving existing programming to ensure that all school programs meet both teacher curriculums and state standards. They're also coordinating with entities including St. Mary's College of Maryland, Historic Jamestown, and other entities to increase awareness of Historic St. Mary's City, bringing in visitors from other places as well. They're hopeful that these efforts, along with increased marketing and advertising, will grow visitor numbers beyond the numbers seen in both fiscal 22 and 23. In the middle of page 7, we have a discussion of the implementation of operational changes, which are still underway in response to an independent audit, which was requested, in the 2022 Joint Chairman's Report. That report restricted funds in the Commission's budget pending the submission of a report to the Budget Committees and the St. Mary's County Delegation on the results of an externally performed performance audit. The audit was submitted in March 2023 and was requested initially due to concern from the committees regarding financial management practices at Historic St. Mary's. The audit found that there were business operations which were run informally with subpar supervision of multiple aspects, including purchasing cards, cash management, and a lack of updated operating and property lease agreements, among other issues. The report also included 9 recommendations. Appendices 2 and 3, respectively, show the list of audit findings as well as all of the recommendations made in the report. Historic St. Mary's is committed to implementing all of the audit recommendations and has already completed several of them, including the hiring of a chief operating officer. They've also created key performance indicators and written policies and procedures for the tracking and governance of operations as recommended. They're in the process of updating operating agreements with key partners, including St. Mary's College of Maryland and the Foundation. And they are in the process of updating other operating agreements. However, this is taking a little bit longer than the audit estimated it should take due to the complexity of updating operating agreements with multiple different partners. The Commission has not yet implemented a recommendation regarding the Brome Howard Inn. They've recognized that the inn was not operating at its full potential, often remaining empty or underutilized, and as such, they've actually closed the inn right now while evaluating efficient uses for it in the future. In the past several months, Historic St. Mary's has issued a request for information and a request for proposals as it works to identify the best utilization of the Brome Howard Inn. Historic St. Mary's reported that the RFI was published first and did not receive any submissions. The RFP, published later, did receive at least one submission, which is currently being evaluated by staff. And we would note that when the Brome Howard Inn is brought back online, Historic St. Mary's should be sure to implement recommendation number 6 as part of the process of bringing it back online. Historic St. Mary's should comment on the status of implementing recommendations from the audit that have not been fully implemented. And the Department of Legislative Services recommends the adoption of committee narrative requesting a report on the progress toward full implementation of all 9 recommendations from the audit. On page 9, we'll see that the recommended narrative, which I've just described, is the only operating budget recommended action. And that is an internally performed report as opposed to the previous report, which was an external audit. This one is to be internally authored by the Historic St. Mary's City Commission. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
In my life, in the one life before I came to the legislature, I was a PTA mom. And that was, I went with both of my kids, and it was such a wonderful trip. It's several years ago now, but it was so interesting for all the kids and just such a different experience being there that I'll always remember that one as one of the favorites anyway. And the kids still talk about it. So it's a good thing. Okay, so we will start with Dr. John Seidel.
Thank you so much. And I shared your experience as a parent as well. So we have that in common. Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you so much for having us here. It's a pleasure to testify before you. I will say I am new on the job, having been here only 6 weeks in, so I have backup with me. To my right, I have Admiral Tim Healy, who is chair of the commission. To his right is Director of Research, Dr. Travis Parno, who did an absolutely stellar job as acting director over the past 9 months. And to my left, I got CFO Doug Hunter, and we also have our new COO, Peter Carocchio, and our facilities director, Joe Kanga. So we should be able to answer any questions you have. You have my written testimony, so I will just summarize to be brief. First, we concur with the analysts' recommendations, both on the budget allocation and also on the recommendations regarding the 2023 legislative audit. Mr. Polakov has been a pleasure to work with. And I will tell you that as a newcomer, as I try to jump into this, I have found the audit extremely helpful. I have no doubt that it was painful at the time for folks, but my colleagues also found it insightful. And well before I arrived, they were working very hard to implement the recommendations. So I'm very satisfied with the progress there. I will offer you a couple of observations that I have as a newcomer on the job from the outside. Historic St. Mary's City has absolutely extraordinary resources. I am just stunned by what I see on and in the ground. It has extraordinary people to go along with it, a really highly capable and very passionate group of people who love what they do. And it has programs that are truly world-class. That said, I will say that I don't believe that enough attention has been placed on the administrative framework or the underpinning that's necessary for long-term sustainability and growth. And I will say also that that's not at all unusual as you look at organizations that have expanded rapidly. But I think that what it means is that when you balance against what we must do today, this agency has no fat in it. And so the budget recommendation is critical. One of my core beliefs coming into this job, and one of the things that excited me about it, is that I believe in the power of heritage tourism and of education, but especially heritage tourism for regional economic development. I've seen that work in a lot of other places, and I want you to know that we at Historic St. Mary's City Commission are committed to seeing the city do its part, and I think that the scope and the track record of the museum should make it a catalyst. But we also have another catalyst that is on the horizon. It's an opportunity that's extraordinarily rare, and that is the coming 400th anniversary of Maryland's founding in 2034. The state was born, after all, at St. Mary's City, and we need to capitalize on that event. It can build visitation on other historic sites in the region, and it's going to benefit all of Southern Maryland. And I think beyond that, it should generate excitement and economic activity that will benefit not just our region, but also the state as a whole. I think you will appreciate that from a planning perspective, 2034 is just around the corner. It's tempting to say it's a decade out, but when we think about all of the planning, the programming, and the infrastructure, the development that is necessary, it is very, very close, and we need to work hard on it right now. I do think we're going to need some significant infrastructure development, which takes time, but we are tremendously excited by the potential, and we're very grateful for your support. So on behalf of our staff and the approximately 60,000 people who walk through our doors every year, thank you, and we're very happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much. Any questions from the committee? I think you're good. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks very much.
Okay, next we have Morgan State University. Kelly Norton is our budget analyst and Dr. David Wilson is here today, I think. There he is. You can come up to the table if you'd like, yes.
Thank you. We're going to start
Can I
on page 4.
Stop for one
Sorry.
second. Our former senator and former chair, Joan Carter Conway is here. Welcome. Love to see you here.
It's always nice to be here in the position that I'm sitting in.
Absolutely. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. We're going to start on page 4. Exhibit 1 shows total undergraduate enrollment and category changes from fall 2018 through 2023. Total undergraduate enrollment increased by 691 students from fall 2022 to 2023. As is illustrated in the exhibit, first-time, full-time students experienced an increase of 3.6% in fall 2023, following a decrease in fall of 2022. Exhibit 2 on page 5 documents the changes in undergraduate applications. As shown in the exhibit, the number of applications grew greatly in fiscal 2023, totaling over 22,741. The yield rate of 12.1%, which is the number of students who actually enrolled from that total, was the lowest rate recorded from fiscal 2014 through 2023. The acceptance rate of 83%, the green line, was also the third highest rate recorded over this period. Exhibit 3 on page 6 provides a breakdown of enrollment trends by location. Continuing to reverse the trend of declining enrollment, in-state enrollment grew by 291 students in 2023. The international undergraduate student population has fallen from the 2017 high mark of 780 students to 161 in 2023. The out-of-state student population continues to increase, growing by 392 students in 2023. Out-of-state students now make up more than 40% of undergraduate enrollment at the university. DLS asked the president to comment on how the institution has increased its in-state population in recent classes after years of decline. Moving to student performance, Exhibit 4 on page 7 provides the second-year retention rates for first-time, full-time students. The second-year retention rate had fallen in 2017 and 2018, but rebounded in 2019, totaling 73.5%. The second-year retention rate dropped to 70% and 68.4% for the 20 and 2021 cohorts respectively. This decline is not surprising due to these cohorts overlapping with the pandemic. Exhibit 5 on page 8 provides the 4- and 6-year graduation rates for first-time, full-time students. As shown in the exhibit, the 4-year graduation rate held steady at 21.8% for the 2016 and 2017 cohorts, but fell to 19% for the 2018 cohort. The 6-year graduation rate decreased slightly by 0.5 percentage points, but is still the third highest in this period. Exhibit 6 on page 9 provides the 8-year graduation rate by Pell and non-Pell recipient status. Non-Pell first-time, full-time students had the highest graduation rates. Both non-Pell and Pell recipient full-time transfer students were more likely to graduate within 8 years than Pell recipient first-time, full-time, and part-time transfer Pell and non-Pell recipient students. Pell and non-Pell eligible part-time transfer students graduated at the lowest rates. Exhibit 7 on page 10 shows the estimated cost of attendance versus the average net price for full-time in-state students by income level between fiscal 2020 through 2022. This exhibit shows that the average cost of attendance over these years was $24,447. However, the actual net price for students when aid was awarded averaged $15,591. In fiscal 2022, the average net price was $11,511 less than the cost of attendance. What this exhibit also shows is that the cost of attendance will vary depending on income level. For example, in fiscal 2022, it cost a student $9,099 with a family income of under $30,000, but $19,753 for a student with a family income of over $110,000. Exhibit 8 on page 11 shows the amount of institutional aid awarded and total dollar amount of awards provided by category. The amount of institutional aid awarded has increased $14.6 million between fiscal 2018 through 2023. Need-based aid totaled $23.4 million alone in fiscal 2023. The U.S. Department of Education reports the median debt for graduates by field of study in an effort to give students a better picture of outcomes at the program level. Exhibit 9 on page 12 illustrates that the median debt of students ranged from just over $20,000 for civil engineering majors to $31,254 for social work majors. And registered nurses had the highest median earnings at $97,259. Moving to the budget, Exhibit 10 on page 14 provides the budget changes for unrestricted funds by program from fiscal 2023 to 2024. The largest dollar change was in research, which increased by $17.6 million. Spending on instruction also increased substantially, growing by $15.8 million. According to MSU, the fiscal 2024 working appropriation does not reflect final anticipated expenditures and revenues. The proposed fiscal 2025 budget found in Exhibit 11 on page 16 includes $7.6 million in salary enhancements and $26.7 million in HBCU settlement funds, and an additional a general fund increase of $3.4 million when excluding the salary enhancements. In total, Morgan's total state fund allocation increases by $10.4 million or 5.5% relative to the adjusted fiscal 2024 working appropriation. DLS asked the president to discuss the planned use of this funding in the work of the new center. Exhibit 12 on page 17 provides a breakdown of unrestricted revenues by source and total unrestricted funds. In fiscal 2025, state funds account for 45% of unrestricted funds. Morgan anticipates total unrestricted funds to grow substantially, increasing to $370.6 million in the 2025 allowance. The personnel data for the university is found on page 18, which identifies that as of December 31st, 2023, the university had over 184 positions vacant above the expected turnover, which can be partially attributed to the creation of 192 positions in fiscal 2023. DLS asked the president to comment on the progress being made to fill the vacant positions. Moving to issues, which begins on page 19, the first issue covers MSU's goal of R1 classification by 2030. Since January 2022, when MSU released its strategic plan, Transformation Morgan Leading the Future, MSU has had the goal of reaching R1, very high research activity within the Carnegie classifications of institutions of higher education. MSU put itself on the path for R1 with its previous strategic plan that included the strategic goal of enhancing its status as a doctoral research university. On November 1st, the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching and the American Council of Education announced that the Carnegie classifications of institutions of higher education will change for the upcoming 2025 classification cycle. The most notable change to the basic classification system is the removal of the research classification for doctoral universities. Research will now be a category separate from the basic classification. There will no longer be a complex methodology to determine which universities are classified as R1 or R2. Currently, a complicated formula ranks all potential research universities based on their doctorate academic program inventory, types of research and development expenditures, science and engineering, research staff, and a per capita analysis. And once universities are ranked, the top half of the institutions are placed in R1 and the bottom half is placed in R2. This methodology for determining R1 and R2 universities incentivize universities to establish programs in fields they lack to be eligible for R1 or R2 classification. In the institution's quest for R1 status, MSU's managing for results metrics have mirrored the previous methodology for determining R1, R2 classification. The institution has been increasing its investments in R&D in both science and engineering and non-science and engineering fields. Since fiscal 2021, total R&D expenditures have increased by $17.6 million or 85.4%, from $20.6 million to $38.2 million in fiscal 2023. Carnegie's current method will be replaced with a simple threshold. Any institution that spends at least $50 million in R&D and confers at least 70 research scholarship doctorates in a year will be designated R1 or very high research spending in doctorate production, and R2 or high research spending in doctorate production will be designated to institutions that spend at least $5 million in R&D and award at least 20 research scholarship doctorates in a year. The 2025 classifications will be based on the higher of either a 3-year average covering the 2021 through 2023 period or the most recent single year. 2023. In the future, it will be only based on the 3-year average. With this simplification, MSU is positioned to achieve R1 status in the 2028 classification cycle, which will be determined by the R&D expenditures and doctoral production for fiscal 2024 through 2026. Exhibit 13 on page 20 shows MSU's expected R&D expenditures and degrees conferred for fiscal 2024 and 2025, according to the university's most recent Managing for Results data. If MSU meets its goals for those 2 fiscal years, the institution will achieve its goal by calendar 2028 if $59 million is expended in research and development in fiscal 2026. DLS asked the president to comment on how the proposed changes might affect its approach to research investment. The second issue is on page 20 and covers the Maryland College of Osteopathic Medicine, or MDCOM, at Morgan. MSU agreed to allow a private entity, Salute Education LLC, to operate the private for-profit medical school on its campus. MHEC approved MDCOM to operate in Maryland, and the school is expecting its first students in late 2024. Salute Education was to cover the cost of demolishing the Montebello complex and building a new facility. However, MSU has been exploring state funds for these projects. If the private entity is no longer planning to fund this new school and program, MSU will need to submit its own academic program approval to move forward with this new program on its campus. DLS asked the president to provide an update on the status of the private partnership and if there are adequate facilities for the first class expected in 2024. The DLS operating budget recommended actions are found on page 21. It is to concur with the governor's allowance. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Great job. I wish I could read as fast as you and as clearly. Dr. Wilson,
Thank you very
awfully
much.
nice to have you here today.
It's great being here. I apologize for my tardiness. I was actually selected this year to be the McGraw Prize winner in American higher education. And a part of that was that I had to give a national webinar, which happened at 12 to 1 today to the election. So thank you very much for
Well, that was worth waiting for you.
Thank you.
In fact,
Thank
you didn't miss anything anyway.
Madam Chair King and members of the committee, as always, we thank you for the opportunity to come before you and say a word or two about Morgan State University and respond to the queries that you have put before us. We also thank Governor Moore for his support of higher education in general and for Morgan State in particular. We thank the analysts for, as you said, a very thorough report that was read fairly quickly. And she
But
put
so articulate.
she has put a charge before me that I have to beat that time, right?
No pressure, no pressure.
I also have with me several of my colleagues here at the table. To my left is our interim executive vice president for budget and finance, David Lachina. Of course, Senator Joan Carter Conway, and then to my right, Senior Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Success, Dr. Kara Turner, and behind me, the Vice President for State and Federal Relations, Dr. Dawn Terryville. We have prepared extensive testimony, and it is not our custom to read this to you. And so I just want to make a few remarks before getting directly to the questions. First of all, we have laid out our testimony, as we always do, in conformity to the 6 strategic goals that we have in our strategic plan, Transformation Morgan 2030. We always start with enhancing student success and well-being, because that is really what we are about as an institution. And so I'm pleased to report to you that we had a goal of 10,000 students at Morgan, and we thought we would reach that goal by 2030. But we really have reached the goal now for the most part. We had 10,400 students before we had to go through the fall drop, and we ended up with the official number that you have here, which was 9,901. But we are achieving this 6-7 years ahead of schedule. And so I can say to you that we are having internal conversations led by our senior vice president, where we may have to consider a pause in enrollment growth for a little bit, because the demand for a Morgan degree is off the chart, but yet the housing challenges are very, very real in Baltimore City. And so we want to make sure that we can catch up housing wise with the demand for a Morgan degree. But with that said, we made tremendous progress in enrolling more students from in-state, as you'll hear in a little bit. And we've used a number of strategies to do that. But we've increased our in-state enrollment by 40% in a relatively short period of time. We also, we have the thousands and thousands of applications now coming to Morgan from all over the United States, practically all over the world. And so we have.
Can I ask you a question?
Oh, sure.
Do you have a certain percentage of Maryland students that you accept? Or do you just accept whoever comes?
We do not have a percent in front of us. It is based on the qualifications that they present to us. But at the end of the day, when we look at our overall student enrollment, it is still predominantly from within the state of Maryland.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And so you can see here on page 3, we start by just giving you a sense of how we have grown that enrollment. We have very robust collaborations and partnerships with our community colleges for transfer. Dr. Sandra Curtinitis and I we've been working very, very closely together now for over a decade. And so we are participating in their new initiative. We expect that to grow fruit. Also, we are not taking our eyes off of our veterans. And so we have a very strong Veterans Affairs office within the Enrollment Management Student Success area. And they're there to minister to the needs of those veterans who also want to come back to college as well. In terms of student success, we just say to our students, the expectation is that they're going to get what they need at Morgan to be able to dance on the world stage with anyone, any place, anytime, anywhere. And our students are showing that all over the place. And so we just outlined here on several pages how our students are just winning. They're winning all these national competitions all over the United States. They are going to some of the top graduate schools in the country and getting full rides. Just an example, we had one student who just finished Morgan this past May. She was an astronaut scholar, one of the few HBCU students ever to be elected or selected for that particular astronaut scholarship. She majored in engineering physics at Morgan, and she is now on a full ride pursuing a PhD in astrophysics at Harvard. And many others are like her as well. Our students are involved in places from the White House to Stanford University. We started about 7 or 8 years ago to really promote an innovation ecosystem at Morgan. And we wanted our students to be exposed to, well, what is innovation? What does that look like? And what is your role in that as students? And so Stanford University, their School of Design, they have an incredibly attractive program where they bring students from all over the United States. It's very competitive. And they stay there for several weeks. It's kind of a year-long program culminating in their going to Stanford for 2 weeks. And they, while there, they engage in design thinking, and they have to develop projects where they come back to campus, and then they have to partner with the administration then and basically implementing these projects of innovation to make the campus more innovative from their eyes. And so you can see here in our testimony that we have had several students to be competitive for that program. They've gone out to Stanford and they'll come back to Morgan, and they never ever they're never bereft of an innovative idea. Likewise, I want to just recognize the fact that our faculty, our administration at Morgan, they continue to win national awards. I particularly want to highlight the Dean of our School of Engineering, Dean Oscar Barton. Dean Barton was just he was just awarded the national award from the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. He received the Edwin F. Church Medal. And the significance of that is that this award has been given every single year to the top person in mechanical engineering in the United States. It has never been given to an African American. And so he is the first African American to receive this award in 57 years. Just a little bit of his background, because he was the former chair of mechanical engineering for the U.S. Naval Academy here in Annapolis, and then left there and became the founding chair of the School of Mechanical Engineering at George Mason University. And then we were able to attract him to Morgan 3 years ago to be our dean as well. Also, as I just indicated, I was selected for the prestigious Harold W. McGraw Junior Prize in Education, and also Dr. Willie E. May, who is our Vice President for Research and Economic Development, with the former Undersecretary of Commerce under the Obama administration, and the Director of NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology. Well, he was selected last year and is now serving as President of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. We're very, very pleased with that. Also, we have 2% we have several faculty at Morgan in science who have just been named amongst the top 2% of scientists in the world. And we have listed here on page 11 about 8 to 10 of those faculty members. And so we're very, very pleased with that as well. Also, I was elected this year to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, actually becoming the first HBCU president to be elected into the academy. And so that was because of the incredible partnership that we have at Morgan with our great team and our great faculty. We continue to elevate ourselves in terms of our research mission at the university. We are on course to achieve R1, very high research status. We were able to realize last year about $83 million in research grants. That coupled with a $27 million IDIQ, indefinite quality, indefinite delivery, over $100 million. In terms of research expenditures, as the analysts picked up, our research expenditures this time around $51 million in research expenditures. And so therefore, with regard to Carnegie, we have met that standard already. With regard to the 70 doctoral degrees, we will miss that by 4 because of the dip that we saw during COVID. So we were in the 70s year over year, and then during COVID, that slipped down to 58. And so when we average that over 3 years, it would be 66. So we would miss being R1 when the Carnegie rankings come out January 2025, but we expect to be there in 2027, 2028. And as I said, when we did the higher ed overview, I was one of the 17 presidents, including President Georgetown and President of American University and others, that for a year met with the American Council on Education behind closed doors and took apart the existing Carnegie metrics. They were too complicated. No one understood them. And basically, here in Maryland, I was a part of the group that gave rise to the 2 data points, 50 million and 70 doctorates, knowing that Morgan would miss it, but it was the right thing to do in terms of just simplifying the process and taking the mystery out of it. Just moving right along, and then we get to the questions here. You can see here that we are outlining all.
Can I stop you 1 second? I just want to say that you do us proud. Morgan's always been a good school, but you have kind of brought them to a higher level, and we're very proud to have you there as the president.
Well, you're awfully kind, Madam Chair. We thank you very much. This is a great time to be in Maryland. And once again, I have to deflect that to the incredible team that we have at Morgan. Right. So thank you. And we continue to improve upon our infrastructure at Morgan. And with regard to our capital budget requests, we appreciate what has been allocated to us. But we continue to struggle with inadequate facilities, particularly in the science area. And so the state has approved a new science complex for us. Kim McCalla, she's been with us now for 15 years. And every project that she has undertaken, she has brought that capital project in not only on budget and on time, but under budget. And we have a record here of returning to the state during my tenure and her tenure at Morgan, a little bit of what you have allocated to us. This one is proving to be so much of a challenge because the numbers came back for $370 million. We went to the table again. We re-engineered out of this project everything that we could and brought it down to 354. But we can't go any lower, and so the state has said it's going to commit 254. And so we'll need to kind of work with the administration in the coming year to see how we can get some additional dollars to build what we need at the institution, given how prolific we have been in churning out patents and research. You know, for this year, the number of patents coming out of Morgan would be #1 amongst HBCUs in the country, right? When I arrived at Morgan, we had 0 patents. And so, you know, we are giving the state a good return on the investment that it is making in us. And then finally, we are looking to accelerate our global education initiatives. At the same time, we understand what it means to be an anchor institution in Baltimore City. We are moving forward now to master plan the 59-acre Lake Clifton property that the state actually was able to gift to us in so many ways. And that's going to be another transformational area in Northeast Baltimore. And hopefully you'll begin to see that materialize soon. In terms of our operating budget, we have requested $9.7 million to continue to put in place specialized research centers at the university. The governor actually responded by funding one of the centers, and we're very, very pleased with that, the Center for Urban and Coastal Climate Science Research. And that is an area where you have asked me to opine on exactly what that is. So let me go to the comments and let me go to that one first. This particular center would be one of its kind in the country where it will be bifurcated. We expect to have a presence in downtown Baltimore, in the Inner Harbor there, very visible, because a portion of it is to look at climate change as it impacts urban areas and urban populations and marginalized centers. And that body of work has not been undertaken. Once again, continuing Morgan's quest toward being our one institution where we're tackling research that no other institution is tackling in the way that we are. So it's no disagreement in terms of duplication. This is very, very unique. And then another space for the center will be on the Chesapeake. You know, we have a campus down there, the Pearl, and so the center would be looking at the same time at the impact of climate change on coastal areas in the state, as well as on the urban areas. That's very strategic because we have been advocating at the federal level Morgan has, for an 18th national federal lab, like Sandia and Oak Ridge. And we want this 18th federal lab, if it occurs under the Obama-Harris administration, to basically target one of our HBCUs or MSIs that is in an urban area. And so with this kind of investment that the state is making in a center here at Morgan in Baltimore, we think that should this 18th federal lab, which would be transformational, materialize, it would put Morgan in a good position to be competitive, to actually be the site for this 18th federal lab. And so that's the way we're looking at how that center will actually move forward.
Can I add something? I'm sorry. Looking at Senator Conway sitting there, Carter Conway, of all the years that I've known you, you looked at Senator Conway and you needed to do something for Morgan. I mean, it's everybody knew the whole time she was here that Morgan was such a priority for her. And it takes all of that to propel a school forward like that. So an extra thank you for all that you did while you were here and still do.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And let me underscore and the fact that she still is doing that. And so she is just an incredible asset to our leadership team at Morgan. And we are so appreciative to have had her on both your side and now as a part of our team on the ground at Morgan as well. So thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
And so the first area where you've asked me to comment is on how we have increased our in-state student population in recent classes after years of decline. And I'm going to turn to my senior VP for enrollment management, Dr. Turner, and ask her to summarize that for us.
Good afternoon. So I won't read all of the bullets here, but just a few of the things that have been in play that have contributed to our overall enrollment increase, and then as our in-state increase has been a part of that. One is the implementation of financial aid optimization. It's really allowed us to strategically award new students coming in need and merit-based aid, and that's been really critical to our being very competitive, both for our in-state and our additional out-of-state students. Also, the emphasis on social justice that's come out of the George Floyd incident, Black Lives Matter. Many Black and Brown students want now to be in a place where they feel safe, where they feel psychologically safe, physically safe. And so our HBCUs have been more popular as a result of that. And Morgan has been able to benefit from that. Also, the capital investments that you all have made in us have been extremely important. And certainly while we still have additional needs, as President Wilson mentioned, the beautiful, just technologically modern and beautiful buildings that have been built in the past few years we have a gorgeous campus. And so when students and prospective students come visit, it makes a great impression. And also the new high demand programs that we've been able to put into place, we're seeing really strong numbers from those. So thank you.
Next, I'm sorry. Next, you've asked me to opine on the center, which I just did, so I'm not going to cover that again. And then comment number 3, page 18, you ask the president to detail the progress being made to fill the vacant positions. And I'm going to ask Executive Vice President David Lacina to summarize that.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. So just briefly to summarize the progress we're making in vacancies, there's several things that we're doing actually is in terms of increasing our outreach. So can you hear me? Okay, there we go. Several things we're doing to address the vacancies, which is increasing our outreach, procuring additional systems. We're investing in advertisement. And we're looking to enhancing our human resources workforce. So many of the vacancies, the growth in vacancies really come on the back of new initiatives. And so one of the things we're also doing, frankly, is to reevaluate how we establish new positions. And in some sense, we've established several new positions to try and enhance the ability to recruit, but it seems we're getting a backlog of positions at that point. So that's another matter that we're going to start to look into. So.
Okay.
Okay, and with regard to comment number 4 on how the proposed changes to Carnegie might impact our research investment, I've spoken a little bit about that, but I would just put 2 other things in front of you real quickly. First, of course, we will have to provide more support for our doctoral students in order now to be more competitive for the doctoral students to maintain the 70 doctoral student production when that goes into effect next year. And then second, the science complex will be critical. And then third, we have a faculty so dedicated to Morgan, but they still have a very, very high teaching load. Year over year has been the highest teaching load in the state at 4.4. And so we'll have to also reduce their teaching load to enable them to be able to spend some more time in research. You also have asked the president to provide an update on the status of the College of Medicine, the private partnership, and if there are adequate facilities for the first class that is expected in 2024. I will say in this setting that unfortunately, the project has experienced delays, and we understand will not qualify to begin a class in fall of 2024. The university is in continued discussions with the private partner, and we are seeking a resolution regarding the project delays to eventually realize this important initiative for our state. And we will keep you duly informed along the way. And so I think we covered everything. So Madam Chair, those are our remarks and our response to your comments, to your questions.
Great job.
Right.
Do we have any comments, Senator Benson?
I am overwhelmed with joy to hear you all talk about Morgan State University, but I'm also excited when I hear what's going on at Bowie State University, but that's a story for another day. We had a doctor who came through here several years ago, and he spoke to us about opening the medical school there. How are we doing there? What progress have we made for the School of Medicine on the campus? Because it's my understanding that's the only medical school on a historical Black college campus in the country. Is that not so, Dr. Wilson? And where are we on that?
Okay, so let me add some illumination to the comments you just made. So first of all, there are 4 existing medical schools in the country that are either affiliated with HBCUs or on the campuses of HBCUs.
The 4.
4, yes. And so you have Howard University Medical School, Meharry Medical School, Morehouse Medical School, and then the Charles Drew School of Medicine in Los Angeles. And so that's it. The last medical school that was opened on the campus of an HBCU was over 50 years ago, and that was the Morehouse School of Medicine. So there's not. So there's a huge demand for more diversity in the medical profession. There has not been a DO school, which is a doctor of osteopathic medicine, on an HBCU campus. And the difference between osteopathic medicine and allopathic is that one branch leads to the MD, the other branch leads to the DO. And the only difference is that one is more concerned about the treatment of a whole person. The other may be a bit more symptomatic, right? But we are interested in the DO approach because there is an extreme paucity of primary and family care physicians, which is what the DO model produces in abundance, right? We have had conversation with Johns Hopkins, and President Daniels is 5,000% behind this effort at Morgan, because quite frankly, Johns Hopkins, the #1 medical school in the country, they don't really produce many primary and family care physicians. And many of the other medical schools don't either. And believe it or not, it is because the cost of going to medical school is so expensive that the analysts, I believe, last year recognized that in the report and asked me to opine on, well, what can Morgan do to reduce the loan costs? Well, these medical school graduates are emerging with, what was it, $300,000-$400,000 in loan debt. And then when you look at the employability, the primary care physicians are the lower end of the salary chain, right? So they're going to emerge with $400,000 loan debt, and their starting salary may be $200,000. It would take them almost their entire life to pay that off. And so therefore you have to come up with a model where you can continue to attract primary and family care physicians at less costs. And so that's where we are in doing that. So let me just conclude this by saying that Morgan State University is committed to a medical school. And we will do everything that we can to ensure that this proposed medical school will indeed materialize and start serving a it's just a critical need in our state. And that is the way that I would respond to your question, Senator Benson.
Is there a hold up with the funding? Someone has talked to me about funding for this program. Were you on a capital? Were they on the capital budget? Did you also? submit a request for funding through the,
We
the
have,
Could you speak?
this is in the public sphere, if you will. We are basically saying if the proposed model does not materialize in this for-profit space, then we might come back to the state to have a conversation with the state about how we move this forward. Does that answer your question?
yeah, I believe in this concept so much. I don't want us to continue to wait around, you know, to get to make the request for the kind of funding that we need to make this work.
So we hear you, and certainly I don't want to get out in front of our partners, but we believe in it strongly too. And so if this
Are you
time
having
around,
success
if,
with the partners?
yes, and so this time around, if the state would want to look at contingency funding to put that in the budget, I think that would be welcomed. If that's what I'm hearing, that will indeed be welcomed.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think that's all our questions. Thank you very much. Our chairman is here to look in on us, show us support.
Chemco, how are you, sir? Great.
Thank you all
All right,
very
thank you.
much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you as well. So, and I'll tell President Bro that you're a proud Bowie graduate.
Okay, next we have Coppin State University. Kelly Norton again is our analyst, and Dr. Anthony Jenkins. You here? Do you want to come to the table?
Okay, thank you. We're going to start on page 4 with Exhibit 1, showing the total undergraduate enrollment and category changes from fall 2018 through 2023. Fall 2023 undergraduate enrollment increased for the first time since fall 2019, increasing by 53 students or 3% when compared to 2022. As shown in the exhibit, all groups except continuing students experienced increases in fall 2023. Exhibit 2 on page 5 documents the changes in undergraduate applications. As illustrated in the exhibit, the number of applications had been improving from 2016 through 2019, but sharply declined with the onset of the pandemic. Applications increased in 2022 and 2023, growing to 4,739 in 2023. The acceptance rate in 2023 increased to 49%, which is the highest total since 2010. However, the yield rate was 18%, roughly in line with what the institution has achieved since 2013. Moving to student performance, Exhibit 3 on page 7 provides the second and third year retention rates for first-time, full-time students. For the 2012 through 2021 cohorts, the second year retention rate has stayed within the 60% range. There was a decrease with the 2020 cohort, but the retention rate rebounded to 70.8% with the 2022 cohort. The third year retention rate has been steadily increasing since the 2015 cohort, with the 2018 cohort's 50.1% retention rate being the highest rate attained at the university in over a decade. However, after the 2018 cohort, third year retention rates followed the same patterns as the second year retention rates and experienced decreases. The rate slightly improved for the 2021 cohort, which increased to 39.5%. Exhibit 4 on page 8 provides the 4- and 6-year graduation rates for first-time, full-time students. As shown in the exhibit, the 6-year graduation rate peaked in the 2014 cohort at 28.5%, but declined 2 cohorts in a row, reaching 21.7% in the 2016 cohort. Despite the declines, the 6-year graduation rate for the 2017 cohort increased to 24.8%. The 4-year graduation rate, which had experienced continual growth from the 2008 cohort through the 2015 cohort, declined after that period and fell to 6.8% for the 2019 cohort. Exhibit 5 on page 9 provides the 8-year graduation rate by Pell and non-Pell recipient status. Full-time transfer students, both Pell and non-Pell eligible, graduate at higher rates than first-time, full-time, and part-time transfer students. Pell eligible students graduate at lower rates than non-Pell eligible students in all categories with the exception of part-time transfer students. Exhibit 6 on page 10 shows the estimated cost of attendance versus the average net price for full-time in-state students by income level between fiscal 2020 through 2022. This exhibit shows that the average cost of attendance over these years was $21,750. However, the actual net price for students when aid was awarded varied depending on income level. For example, in fiscal 2022, it cost a student $7,532 with a family income of under $30,000, but $10,590 for a student with a family income over $48,000 through $75,000. Exhibit 7 on page 11 shows the amount of institutional aid awarded and total dollar amount of awards provided by category. The amount of institutional aid awarded has increased from $3.7 million in fiscal 2017 to $4.2 million in fiscal 2022. Need-based scholarships totaled $1.4 million in fiscal 2022 and represented the aid category with the greatest award distributed for that year. The U.S. Department of Education reports the median debt and earnings for graduates by field of study in an effort to give students a better picture of outcomes at the program level. Exhibit 8 on page 12 illustrates that the median debt of students ranged from just over $20,000 for biology majors to over $35,000 for liberal arts majors. As is also shown in exhibit, nursing majors attained the highest median earnings totaling over $80,000. Moving to the budget, Exhibit 9 on page 13 provides the budget changes for unrestricted funds by program from fiscal 2022 through 2024. Instruction costs are expected to increase by $5 million and institutional support by $3.4 million due to the filling of vacant regular and contractual positions. Operation and maintenance of plant decreases by $0.6 million as a result of lower debt service costs. The proposed fiscal 2025 budget found in Exhibit 10 on page 15 includes $2.4 million in salary enhancements, $9 million in HBCU settlement funds, and a general fund decrease of $0.5 million when excluding the salary enhancements. Coppin's total state fund allocation increases by $1.3 million or 2% relative to the adjusted fiscal 2024 working appropriation. Exhibit 11 on page 16 provides a breakdown of unrestricted revenues by source and total unrestricted funds. As is shown in the exhibit, state support generally represents roughly 2/3 of unrestricted revenue for Coppin. The fiscal 2025 allowance anticipates unrestricted revenues to reach $93.5 million. The personnel data for the university is found on page 17, which identifies that as of December 31st, 2023, the university had 76 vacancies, 50 positions vacant above the expected turnover. DLS asked the president to comment on the high number of vacancies and the efforts to fill them. Moving to issues, which begins on page 18, the first issue covers the fiscal compliance audit for Coppin. In November 2023, the Office of Legislative Audits, or OLA, released an audit of Coppin covering the period from July 25th, 2018 through June 30th, 2022, which included the distribution of higher education emergency relief funds, or HERF, during the COVID-19 pandemic. The audit included 5 findings, the most concerning being that Coppin awarded most HERF grants without consideration of an individual student's cost of attendance and actual financial need, and that additional hardship assistant grants were awarded to students who did not appear to meet eligibility criteria. According to OLA, Coppin distributed the HERF in equal predetermined amounts based on full or part-time status and not based on actual need. In particular, OLA noted that students whose costs of attendance were paid in part or whole by other means, or who had lighter course loads, were less likely to have needed the same level of HERF funding and consequently were more likely to have received a refund of that aid. Coppin was to award hardship grants to students that were eligible for federal Pell Grant funding who submitted an application for this additional assistance to demonstrate the need for the funds. Of the 28 students who received the hardship grant, 9 were not Pell eligible, including 1 that was a child of a Coppin State employee. OLA has also reported that 3 Coppin State University employees enrolled in just 1 class for the 2 semesters HERF funds were awarded and received the same HERF payments and credits as all part-time students, as well as remission of their tuition costs. As a result, these individuals each received cash refunds for these 2 semesters. None of these employees were enrolled in the semester prior or after those semesters, and each employee was classified as a non-degree seeking student. In response to OLA's findings, Coppin State University is developing an independent financial aid advisory committee to review and implement policies and procedures for awarding all need-based aid award programs. DLS asks the president to comment on the progress of the committee, and the president should comment on Coppin State's approach to the HERF grants and any policies that the institution has or will implement to ensure that financial aid programs are not used improperly prior to the completion of the committee's work. The second issue starts on page 18 and concerns enrollment in state funds per full-time equivalent student. As shown in Exhibit 12 on page 19, total enrollment at Coppin has continuously declined from 2011 through 2022. Coppin's total enrollment has fallen by 51.1% from the 2005 record high of 4,306 students to 2,106 students in 2023. However, enrollment for the fall 2023 cohort represents an increase of 5.2% or 105 students from the fall 2022 cohort. Despite the decline in enrollment, education and general expenditures have, with the exception of 2022, steadily increased as shown in Exhibit 13 on page 20. While generally not expending greater than the revenue brought in, Coppin's overall E&G expenditure amount is budgeted to increase by 32.4% from fiscal 2017 through 2025, growing by $19.9 million. As a result of the increased expenditures and decreasing enrollment, state funds per FTE have increased. Exhibit 14 on page 21 shows state funds per FTE at Coppin from 2017 to the 2025 adjusted allowance. State funds spent per FTE have increased by $18,423 or $13,324 when excluding HBCU settlement funds. At $39,295, Coppin is behind only the University of Maryland, Baltimore in cost per FTEs. And that the DLS operating budget recommended action is found on page 22. That is to see the University Systems of Maryland overview for system-wide recommendations. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Jenkins, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's good to see you again. And to all of the committee members, thank you as well. It is a pleasure to be here with you. I have with me Steve Danek, who's my Vice President for Administration and Finance, Dr. Pamela Wilkes, who is my University Provost, and Dr. Stefan Moore, who is the Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Affairs. I also have with me in the audience Stephanie Hall, who is my Chief Government and Legislative Affairs Officer, my Chief of Staff, Ms. Anne-Marie Waterman. I was about to say Dr. Waterman, which is soon to happen. And then I have one of my impressive alums. Is he still with me? Here he is, one of my incredible alumni who's always in support of Coppin State University. And I want to thank him for his ongoing support and being here with us. I want to thank our analysts for the thorough report of Coppin State. And, you know, what I'll do is I'll say a couple of comments. I won't read our report in its entirety. You have that before you. And I'll put this in context to say what I'm about to talk about and the astonishing accomplishments that we've seen at Coppin over the past 4 years. I put that in context that a decade ago, the legislature and USM conducted a study to look at Coppin to see if it was worthy to continue receiving funding or it should be merged into another institution. So with that backdrop, I want to talk about what we've accomplished over the last 4 years. When I arrived at the university in 2020, we set out to reimagine our role as an urban university. And we wanted to look at how we increase access, how we expand innovation, how we improve opportunity to a quality education, and how we do more to improve the human condition. And so that was a shift for the institution. And it required multiple conversations and us to really look at ourselves from a critical lens. And so as an urban university, you know, Coppin continues to distinguish itself as an institution that is invaluable and irreplaceable. And we are very pleased with the overall progress that we've been making over the last several years. In fact, our brand and our reputation across Maryland and throughout the United States, it's never been stronger than it is right now. As a result, the demand for the Coppin experience is growing. Today, we educate students from a diverse, multicultural, multi-generational perspective. Students are coming to us from 35 states, including the District of Columbia, and 31 countries to earn degrees in our nationally recognized academic programs in business, criminal justice, social work, psychology, teacher education, healthcare, and STEM. And last fall, as noted, our overall enrollment increased 5%, 20% at the freshman level, 35% at the transfer level, and 53% at the graduate level. And we also introduced a program that was entitled Reimagine Yourself at Coppin. That program, we identified over 400 students who had left the university before earning their degree. We were able to return 114 of those students, so just over 25% for fall 23. And now they are back and moving toward graduation. You know, we've also looked at, from a perspective of growing Coppin, that an essential part of our efforts is our ability to retain more students. Guided by our Eagle Achievement Center, which we opened in spring 2023, we moved our first year retention from 57% in 2019 to 74% in 2023. That's a tremendous increase in a short period of time. And to reduce students' time on degree completion and to lower student debt, we introduced our Summer SOAR program. Now, this is a program that allows those students who earn 30 semester credit hours during an academic year to take up to 6 hours over the summer for free. Last summer, we had over 150 students take advantage of this wonderful opportunity. And it is designed to reduce costs and keep students moving over the summer. And at a time when people are questioning the value and the cost of higher education, Maryland's most affordable four-year university has increased its merit and need-based scholarships. And we launched our Expand Eagle Nation program, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago. This program targets students in 30 states and territories where there's no HBCUs and offers them in-state tuition at Coppin. And we are working on partnerships with various states, California, Illinois, Massachusetts, Michigan. And last fall, we developed a partnership with the Community College System of Colorado. And, you know, whether we are making history, playing LSU as the first HBCU to ever host a D1 defending national champion, or we're winning championships on our own, you all have heard me say Coppin State is where champions and scholars are made. Our men's baseball program are the reigning MEAC champions. Our volleyball team won the championship last year, bringing a second championship to Coppin and to Baltimore City. But that's not the most impressive piece. For the third consecutive year, 2021, 22, and 23, Coppin has led the MEAC with the highest student-athlete graduation rate. That's higher than Howard, that's higher than Morgan, that's higher than North Carolina Central University, that's higher than Delaware State, the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, Norfolk State, and South Carolina State. And we are extremely proud of our student-athletes and the way that they are excelling both on the field of competition and academically. We've also focused on our culture of research at the university because it's never been stronger than it is now. Up from $2 million in 2019 to over $14 million in research in 2023. Now that is a 1,266% increase and a record high for the university. Our research allows us to advance knowledge, discovery, and creativity across campus and beyond. And it allows us to provide experiential learning opportunities for our students, as well as build impact and elevate the university's profile. Our faculty are using their expertise and our centers of excellence to improve the human condition. We are working to increase teachers of color at the K through 12 level with our Center for Inclusive Excellence. We're developing solutions to reduce gun and youth violence through our Bishop L. Robinson Jr. Justice Institute, where Dr. Johnny Rice II is a national leader on gun and youth violence. We're also tackling climate issues that impact urban environments through our Center for Nanotechnology. This center is up and running. And so we've just secured $2.1 million from the federal government to make sure that our Center of Nanotechnology, focusing on climate change, continues to elevate at an optimum level. And we are addressing challenges that foster systemic racism and hinders generational wealth building among communities of color through our Charles Schwab Community Wealth Center and our Truist Bank Black Economic Hub Center. Our faculty are also highly sought after for their expertise as well as their leadership and their ability to solve complex issues and introduce innovative solutions. They have been elected as presidents of national and state organizations and appointed by Governor Wes Moore for several commissions here in Maryland. As a preemptive and responsible 21st century university, we're also focusing on how we do more for our students. We partnered with the Housing Authority of Baltimore City to better support our students who are facing housing challenges. This is a first of its kind program in the state of Maryland, and Coppin is leading the way. And when it comes to security, which we take extremely seriously, we have the safest residential campus in Baltimore City. For our campus, we have on our force 20 police officers and security officers. We have expanded cameras across campus, moving from 320 to 438. We are also equipped with text notification software. We have shotgun detection technology on campus, license plate recognition technology, remote door locking capabilities, and other tools that allow our campus to either report incidences or to seek help. And I'm also proud from a financial and philanthropic perspective that Coppin is strong and getting stronger. We have increased our university fund balance from $3.2 million to $25.8 million in the last 7 years. And fundraising at Coppin has never been stronger. Every year since 2019, contributions from major corporations, our alumni, and faculty and staff has increased. And last year, we achieved a historic milestone of raising over $6 million. We are also extremely pleased that we have increased the university endowment by 53% in just 3 years. And when we talk about return on investment, Grad Report, a national organization that assesses colleges and universities across the nation, looking at graduates 1 year after they graduate and the salaries that they make versus the overall cost of their education. When they looked at the four-year colleges in the great state of Maryland, Coppin is ranked 7th. And so we continue to do incredible things at our institution, and it is a team effort. And I am extremely proud and pleased with the team that we have assembled. The metrics that define a quality university include evidence of faculty scholarship, student achievement, strong partnerships, and competitive research. And Coppin is excelling across each of these divisions. So in the spirit of fostering our astonishing progress, I respectfully request your support of the governor's budget, as well as the request that we've submitted to the governor outlined on page 18 of our document. And while our requests are mild, they are essential to the significant progress that we've been making at Coppin State University and our commitment to improve the human condition. With that, Madam Chair, I'll turn to the questions that we were asked to respond to. I think that the first question we were asked to look at was regarding the high number of vacancies that we have at the institution. I'm going to ask Vice President Danik to also weigh in and provide some additional information. But I will tell you that what we've been able to do is to reduce that number as of December 2023. And we have looked at a number of factors that we believe have contributed to our inability to fill some of these very important vacancies, but also looking at pathways moving forward. We understand that the pandemic had had a significant impact on Coppin. We went into the pandemic with some vacancies, but the pandemic also exacerbated that entire situation for us, as you've heard from some of our other colleagues. What we found coming out of the pandemic, or even in the pandemic, is that faculty and staff were moving towards retirement. We also saw that the pandemic changed the approach of how faculty and staff wanted to work within higher education. The biggest hit for us was in our IT area, where we have continued to find challenges in trying to compete with rising salaries and flexible working modalities. So from the IT perspective, many individuals are now wanting to work full-time from home. And that is a challenge for institutions based on the work that we do and some policies that are in place across the university system of Maryland. The other things that we have looked at and found out about how to address some of these vacancies is we started looking at how we are marketing our positions and data that we needed to, I think, be more clear about. And so some of those things are putting salary scales in our position announcements. We are also looking at expanding the platforms where we market the institution. So outside of the normal publications of the Chronicle of Higher Education and diverse issues of higher education, we're also looking at social platforms, whether it's LinkedIn. We are also tapping into national organizations and their actual career services. And so we believe that based on the reduction that we've seen since December 2023 and some of the new methods that we are going to be implementing over the coming months, we believe that that will help us address some of the vacancies that we've seen. The biggest piece that we have little control over is the sheer quality, trying to find quality candidates who can meet the expectations and the requirements that we need for these roles at the institution. And so I'll pause to you, Mr. Danik, if there's anything else that you want to add, or if you believe that we've touched on the most important parts.
I think the president has really given a comprehensive response. The only thing I will add to it is we're also reviewing our internal staffing and processes to ensure that we're being responsive to this new market that we're trying to recruit in. And change takes a little bit of time, and we are working on that. And we've been able to bring in some new personnel with a little different perspective that we think will also be a complement to all the other changes we've made to our recruiting processes for finding new employees to fill these vacancies. Thank you.
And the second question, Madam Chair and Subcommittee, was around our use of HERF funding and the scholarship committee that we have put in place. I'll say that our scholarship committee was established as a result of a comprehensive review that revealed inconsistent processing, vetting, and posting of scholarships to student accounts. And I wanted to address that. So that's why we looked at implementing the actual scholarship committee. The committee is also responsible for developing policies and implementing controls that ensure the administering of scholarships is fair, timely, consistent, and it fosters better communication and collaboration across campus. That committee work is still ongoing, and their recommendations are due to me at the end of the spring semester with full implementation for fall 24. You also asked about the disbursement of our funding of the CARES Act dollars. Coppin State University received $13 million. it was mandated by the federal government that $6.9 million of our 13 million had to go directly to our students. And so that was a mandate that Coppin had no flexibility in. And so with that, we then let me say this. We administered those dollars without looking at any financial aid criteria, because that was not a requirement that the federal government was asking us to do. It was simply saying this portion of the funding must be administered to the institution, basically using Coppin as a pass-through for those dollars. Now, after we did that, we still saw that many of our students were struggling from the pandemic, medical-wise, rent-wise, lifestyle-wise. They were struggling trying to make ends meet. We then took an additional $6.9 million and we administered that in a way that gave our students $1,200 grants. Again, using a blanket approach without looking at a student's financial aid status, because that was not a requirement from the federal government. We felt that the steps that we took were in line with the best needs of our students, and we interpreted the actual policy from the federal government that supported the way we administered those dollars, and we felt very comfortable that we were doing what was most appropriate and doing it systematically correct. And so I'll ask again, Mr. Danik, to address any questions or anything that I may have missed on that aspect of it, of how and why we administered our HERF funding in the manner that we did. Anything, Steve?
I will just say that obviously at the point in time that this was occurring, it was a very tumultuous time. And as these federal dollars were coming out, we were constantly in communication with both the University System of Maryland as well as the federal government to ensure that we were following the guidelines and the nature of what the federal government intended these dollars to do. And so we feel very comfortable in how we handled the dollars and how they were dispersed to the students, taking into account to make sure that as the funds were going out, to ensure that the students were getting the intended dollars and the aid that the government was intending for them to receive. Because again, as Dr. Jenkins indicated, it was a very difficult time for a lot of our students, of course, for everybody.
And with that, Madam Chair, that ends my report.
Thank you very much. Great job. Any comments from the committee? Senator Benson?
I want to thank you all for the work that you're doing. I need not tell you all, I've been around for a long time, and I knew the reputation of Coppin prior to about 5 years ago. And to sit here and see the progress and hear the progress that you all have made, Dr. Jenkins, I am immensely proud. And not only that, but Coppin State is so important to the citizens of Baltimore. You know, it sets in the heart of an area that is in desperate need of Coppin State University. I visited there several years ago. I haven't had the opportunity to do it within the last 4 or 5 years since you've been there, Dr. Jenkins. But I want to say to you that I was very concerned. I have to tell you, I was a part of the group that was very concerned about whether or not Coppin should continue or should it merge with another university. But to hear what is going on now and the progress that's being made, gives me real hope. But also I'm really excited because we are now seeing in this committee the emergence of the number of students who are Black and Brown, who are returning to colleges and universities. In the state of Maryland right now, most of our historical Black colleges and universities are exploding at the seams. Could you comment on how you all are working? I see that there has been a significant increase in the number of undergraduates that are now coming to Coppin. how are you all coping with the significant increase of the number of students that are coming there?
Thank you, Senator. That's an excellent question, and I thank you for your kind words. Again, that's the result of my entire team and our
I know
faculty and
that's right.
staff. They have done a tremendous job and had been doing a tremendous job for decades. I'll say that we really looked at how could we be more intrusive, more proactive, and more intentional about our recruitment efforts. And we had to do a better job of telling our story and our narrative because Coppin has a very strong story. Whether it's in teaching, we have the #1 nursing program amongst Maryland's HBCUs. We are doing just great work. We had to help introduce Coppin and reintroduce Coppin. We introduced it to those families and parents who didn't know us, and we reintroduced Coppin to a lot of people who had an outdated perception of this institution. Things that were untrue, myths and stereotypes and these type of things. And so we've been focusing on the facts, and the facts are looking at the numbers from retention to students coming. Coppin has always had students coming. We've never had an enrollment problem. We've had a retention problem. And when you educate the highest percentage of Pell eligible students, it takes more to get those students over the finish line. And so we've also focused on how we can condense that process and how we provide more financial support to those students coming in and while they are at the institution. We've also done a better job of building partnerships with the K-12 system and our 2-year partner institutions. We are BCCC's #1 feeder. We have more students from BCCC coming to us than any other 4-year university in Baltimore City. And we are now seeing more students coming to us from Prince George's County and Anne Arundel County and Baltimore County, all of these other counties that historically were not coming to Coppin. We launched our presidential scholarship, and what we've seen over the last 2 years is we are now seeing more valedictorians and salutatorians enrolling at Coppin. And so what I have on the campus is what few, if any other institutions have in the state, is I have that valedictorian, and I also have the student who maybe didn't go to the best high school, no fault of their own, and they shouldn't be penalized for that. But they're coming to us with a 2.0 GPA, a 2.1 GPA, and we take that student and that valedictorian and we get them over the finish line. Very few schools in the nation, in the state can say that because they're not recruiting those 2.0 students, right? It's easy to recruit the 3.5s and the 4.0s and get them over, but it says more when you help lift that bottom quartile. And that's where Coppin has a proven track record of doing it better than anybody else. We have been focusing on those factors and being preemptive with using predictive analytics to meeting our students where they are when they come in and get them out. As a result, families and students have been more intrigued about what's going on, and our students at the university have been outstanding soundboards for us, going back into the schools and talking to their friends and getting on social media about all the great things going on at the university.
Thank you very much.
I am, you know that I'm an educator. It just makes all the difference in the world when you have your faculty on the university campus that can touch the students and talk with the students, as opposed to using where they call
Senator
outside
from
I hate to interrupt you, but we have to wrap this up because I have another meeting that I've got to get to. Can maybe even take it offline if you'd like.
I've got it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
I got it.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you about that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You're gonna be excellent to have. Thank you all very, very much.